Morning, everyone. I want to talk about what a no surprises implementation looks like in a recovery audit. So, in the recovery audit space, the number one risk you have, if you haven't performed this work before and you're considering doing so, the number one risk you have for failure, it's not that it costs too much, right? We already talked about in a previous video, this work's almost always done on a contingency basis. So that's not a risk. That's normally a very high risk when starting a new project, right? Is that, hey, we spent a bunch of money, we didn't get anything for it. Recovery audit, you don't spend money unless you get money 95% of the time. So that's not your problem. It's not even too much time going into it, although that is a significant risk, right? Hey, I don't want to kick off this work, spend a bunch of time, and you get nothing out of it. That's high on the list. The number one risk you have is what I call the surprise risk. The surprise risk is you start kicking off this work, and as you're kicking off this work, you find out that, sorry, I just lost my train of thought there. As you start to kick off this work, you find out that someone in your organization didn't know about it, and then the phones start ringing, right? Large organizations are very siloed. We have legal, procurement, IT, business users, ethics, internal audit. If your organization isn't organizationally properly aware of what's going on in a recovery audit, that day can come. And what does that look like? I'll use a case study. So we go off and we decide to kick off a recovery audit for ABC Corp. Our main contact, let's say, is an internal audit or an accounts payable. They're excited to get the work done. They want to bring some money back to their organization. So we begin performing the work for them. We start reaching out to suppliers, get the right data. Things seem to be going really well. A couple months into the project, we get a nasty email coming from procurement. And one of the vendors that we've reached out to is in the process of renegotiation. And some of the claims that have been issued against the vendor or to the vendor have caused huge friction points. And now procurement is upset because they feel like it's weakened their position in the negotiation of the new contract. That's one in maybe 100 examples of a surprise, right? Someone within your organization needed to know that this work was going on, and they didn't. And so therefore you have issues. You have a lot of problems. Sorry, my dog's running me through the playground here. So how do you avoid that? So whenever we kick off a recovery audit, my number one recommendation, one is, even in the sales process, make sure that all the right stakeholders are involved or have the opportunity to be involved. This can be difficult in a large organization, but as you're going through the process, and I mean the sales process, right? Like before you've even decided to perform the work, and you have those initial discussions to walk through, make sure you have invitations for anyone who touches the vendor. Not everyone will get on the call, but even those who don't get on the call, make sure that they get a copy of the deck. And honestly, in today's day, that they have either a recording or a AI summary of the minutes from the meeting. It's critical that every part of your organization that has interaction with the vendors who will be under audit, that they are aware of what's going on and that they have the general shape of what a recovery audit is. And what do I mean by the general shape? Hey, we're going to be reaching out to vendors. We're going to be raising potential overbillings, potential errors in a respectful and professional manner. We're going to be having conversations to see if there's any money that's due back to our organization. And then we're going to look to resolve those things. That's critical. So that's number one, just making sure all departments are aware of it. Number two is to explicitly offer and ask for exclusions from all of those same parties. So as that communication goes out to, let's say, procurement, to legal, to IT, if there are any, or the business owners, if there are any vendors that you want us to exclude from this process, please let us know and give us the justification for doing so. And again, I'm speaking as an internal resource performing a recovery audit for my company. This is common. So when we perform recovery audit work, always we have an excluded list of vendors for any number of reasons that we're not to reach out to. It could be because the power dynamic of the relationship, there's no chance that my company can pursue claims for them. It can be because they're in the process of negotiation. It can be because there's undue friction in the relationship right now for any number of reasons. It could be operational reasons, could be legal reasons, could be compliance reasons. But the recovery audit firm, we know not to reach out to that supplier, to that vendor, and exacerbate what's already there. Again, no surprises. We don't want to have, my recovery audit firm reach out to your supplier and then find out that you guys are already in the middle of some friction related to operational delivery. And now the supplier's reading into the audit thinking that it's some type of retribution for some of the discussions that have taken place, because they often will, right? Let's avoid those misunderstandings. Let's avoid those surprises. I always try to say, we just try to avoid having the phones ringing. We don't want to have our main contact. When we come into a new recovery audit, we don't normally have our main point of contact or two. That's really our champion within the organization. I don't want that individual to have that day where they get a bunch of phone calls saying, what the heck is going on? What work are you guys doing? So number one, make sure all those parties, again, summary, are aware that the audit's going on. 2, explicitly ask them for a list of excluded vendors and justifications for exclusions. And then 3, this is I like to keep things to a list of 3, is keep them updated on what's going on in the work. So at our firm, we send either weekly or sometimes every other week updates. We try to make them very consumable, very simple, has a summary, an executive summary of all the work that's being performed. It has a table that walks through each individual supplier and vendor result response, and it's a PDF file that's created from either a PowerPoint file or a Canva file or some type of presentation file, so it's easily consumable. And we share that with our contacts prior to our update meeting. Now the value is, 1, it makes the update meeting more efficient, but 2, it's a file that's easily shareable to those people who need to be kept up to date with the project, but aren't going to be on the weekly call every single week, right? Or probably never are on the weekly call. That can be forwarded and shared with them. So again, long video today. I'm getting to where I'm talking longer and longer on these things, but point 1, make sure that everyone knows who needs to know within your organization. Point 2, make sure they have the opportunity to exclude suppliers and vendors where it needs to be excluded because of any points of friction or any other business concerns going on. And then 3 is keep those contacts up to date, even the ones who aren't interested in the day-to-day results. Make sure that they are getting the regular updates. It can be something that's just forwarded, every other week or once a month or even once a quarter, so that they know what's going on and what point of outreach is happening, so that when their vendors and their suppliers are talking to them, they're not surprised that they're bringing up some of these claims that are being discussed and worked through with the supplier universe. So again, if you've gotten to this point in the video, I appreciate you, and have a great week. We'll talk hopefully tomorrow. Bye.